Let's dive into these weight loss drugs that are everywhere in the news lately. Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro Zepbound.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? Not just the science, but the whole scene around them. Big pharma players like Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. Then you've got compounding pharmacies scrambling to meet demand. And of course, the patients stuck in the middle.
Exactly. Feels like a high stakes game with a lot at stake. So let's break it down, starting with the basics. What are these drugs and how do they work?
Well, they're not your typical diet pills. Ozempic and Wegovy use semaglutide, while Mounjaro and Zepbound use tirzepatide. Originally, these were for type 2 diabetes.
Right, I've heard of it. So how'd they become the weight loss miracle everyone's talking about?
Turns out there's this interesting side effect, significant weight loss. They're part of a drug class called GLP-1 receptor agonists.
Okay, that's getting a bit sciencey. Can you explain it for us non-scientists?
Sure, basically they mimic a hormone in your gut. It signals to your brain that you're full, helps regulate blood sugar, which is why they work for diabetes, but it also leads to weight loss, reduces appetite. You feel fuller for longer.
So it's not just about willpower. It's actually changing how your body reacts to food. No wonder everyone wants it.
Absolutely. And that's where the trouble began. The demand was so high, Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly couldn't keep up, leading to the shortages we've all heard about.
And that's when compounding pharmacies stepped in. Right.
Exactly. They saw a way to fill the gap, creating their own versions, often cheaper, which has been huge for patients who can't afford the name brands or don't have insurance.
So it's David versus Goliath. Small compounding pharmacies helping out when the big guys couldn't.
On the surface, it seems that way, but as usual, it's more complicated than that. Big Pharma is now arguing the shortages are over. Compounding should stop.
Why? Are they worried about profits?
Well, profit is a factor for sure, but they also claim safety concerns. They say compounded versions might not be as safe or as effective as the FDA-approved drug.
I can see that. You want to make sure people are getting medication that's safe and reliable.
Of course. But compounding pharmacies argue they're providing a vital service to patients who might otherwise go without treatment. They say they follow strict guidelines to make sure that compounded medications are safe and high quality.
So who's right? It sounds like both sides have valid points.
That's the problem. It's not black and white. This situation really highlights the tension in healthcare between safety and affordability.
Meanwhile, patients are just trying to get the meds they need.
Exactly. That's the core issue. Here's an example. Jennifer Birch, a compounding pharmacist in North Carolina.
What about her?
Even after the drug company said the shortage was over, she still couldn't get enough of the name brand to meet her patients' needs, so she kept compounding to make sure they could stay on their treatment.
So the official shortage was over, but the reality was different.
Exactly. And this difference between what's officially declared and what's actually happening is the big theme in all this.
I'm starting to get how messy this is. The companies say the shortage is over, but pharmacists like Jennifer are saying, hold on, I still can't get the medication my patients need.
Exactly. And that raises some questions about how the FDA decides when a shortage is really over. Does the system reflect the reality for patients and doctors?
Sounds like the system itself might be part of the problem.
That's a possibility. The rules might not be flexible enough to respond to these fast-changing situations like we're seeing with these weight loss drugs.
So the rules are out of touch with what's happening on the ground.
Seems like it. And that disconnect has real consequences for patients who are stuck in the middle of this fight between big pharma and compounding pharmacies.
And it's not just about getting the medication. There's also the worry about what happens when people can't get these drugs the right way.
Another layer to this whole thing, take Scott Welch. He's a pharmacist ingredient.
Okay, what's his take?
Scott is worried that if patients can't get these weight loss drugs from legitimate sources, they might turn to the black market.
That's a scary thought.
It is counterfeit products, wrong dosages, all kinds of risks that can seriously harm people.
It shows you that when people can't access treatment the right way, they'll do whatever they can.
That's right. And that's what makes this debate so important. It's not just an abstract argument about regulations and market share. It's about real people's lives and their well-being.
So we've got this legal back and forth about whether there's a shortage, the FDA trying to manage it all, and meanwhile, patients are wondering where their next dose is coming from. It's a mess.
It is a mess. It shows how urgently we need a better way to manage drug shortages, a way that puts patients first.
Well, we've definitely uncovered a lot. It's way more complicated than I initially thought. What else is there to this story of weight loss drugs and big pharma?
Lots more to talk about. Let's get into the legal side of compounding, especially this shortage rule.
Sounds good. Let's dive in.
So this shortage rule, it's kind of loophole. It lets compounding pharmacies jump in when there's an official shortage.
Right. Makes sense. It's meant to help patients get the medication they need when their usual supply chain breaks down.
Exactly, a safety net. But with these weight loss drugs, the whole idea of a shortage gets kind of fuzzy.
Because drug companies are saying one thing, but pharmacists are seeing something different on the ground.
Exactly. And that gray area is where the legal stuff gets interesting. Novo Nordisk, the company that makes Ozempic and Wegovy, they tried to get semaglutide on this list of drugs that are supposed to be too risky to compound safely.
Wait, so they're trying to limit compounding even more.
That's the goal. But here's the crazy part. That list, it doesn't even exist yet.
So they're using a list that doesn't exist to restrict access to a drug that everyone wants. It feels like a legal game.
It does, and it makes you wonder if they're putting profits ahead of patients.
It's kind of disturbing to think about companies manipulating the system to protect their market share, even if it means patients struggle to get their meds.
It's a valid concern. It speaks to the power dynamics in the whole industry. Robin Seldman, Chu law professor, she's argued that all these legal moves by both big pharma and compounding pharmacies, they could make government agencies like the FDA less likely to step in the future.
So they don't want to get involved.
Basically, they're worried about more lawsuits, even if it's the right thing to do for public health.
So patients lose either way, limited access because of shortages, or higher prices and restrictions if compounding goes away.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. No easy answers. It shows we need a better system for regulation, something that can adapt to these challenges.
We've talked about the demand, the shortages, the legal battles, compounding pharmacies. But what about the patient? How is all this affecting the people who need these medications?
You imagine you're a patient. You finally found a treatment that works. You're managing your weight, your health is improving, and then suddenly everything's up in the air.
Because their pharmacy might stop providing the compounded medication.
Right. You're left wondering, can I afford the name brand, and do I have to stop treatment completely? It's incredibly stressful, disruptive to their care.
It's like a step backwards, just when you're making progress.
Exactly. And it's not just annoying. It can have serious consequences for their health.
I remember reading about a pharmacist who had to make a tough decision.
Yeah, there was this pharmacist. They had to choose between compounding tirzepatide themselves or buying it pre-compounded from this big outsourcing facility.
Outsourcing facility, what's that?
Basically, it's like a meta-compounding pharmacy. They make huge batches of compounded medications and send them out all over the country.
So even within compounding, there's all this complexity.
Right, and the decision to compound in-house or use an outsourcing facility, it's complicated. Cost-capacity regulations, all kinds of factors.
And for some compounding pharmacies, it's just too much.
Sadly, that's true. Some have stopped filling these prescriptions altogether. Too much legal uncertainty, too much risk.
It shows how fragile the system is. It's not working for patients, and it's not working for the healthcare providers trying to help them.
You're right. We need a better way, more stable, more reliable, something that puts patients first.
This whole situation with weight loss drugs, it feels like it's revealing bigger problems in healthcare.
It does. It's raising questions about affordability, access to medicine, and that goes way beyond just weight loss. We need to look at the big picture.
Absolutely. So what does that bigger picture look like? Where do we go from here? This whole thing with weight loss drugs, it feels like just the beginning.
It really does. This is about way more than just weight loss. It's showing us how messed up drug pricing is and how hard it is to get essential meds in the U.S.
So where do we even start? This feels huge.
Well, one thing is making drug prices transparent. We need to know why these medications are so expensive. The U.S. government doesn't negotiate drug prices like a lot of other countries do.
So we're letting companies set their own prices. That doesn't seem fair, especially when it comes to people's health.
It definitely needs to change. Then there's patents. Drug companies put a ton of money into research. They should get paid for that. But those patents can stop cheaper generics from coming out for years. Keeps prices high.
So it's like, we want new drugs, but then we can't afford them.
It's tough. We need to find a way to support innovation and also make sure everyone who needs these medications can get them, not just the people who can afford them.
It's all connected to what we talked about earlier, the FDA, the shortage rule. The rules aren't keeping up at the market. Companies can use that to their advantage.
You got it. We need a system that's faster, more flexible, that can adapt to these changes and protect patient access. The current system just isn't cutting it.
We've talked about transparency and pricing, a better system for regulations. But what about right now? What can we do about these shortages so people don't have to go without treatment?
That's key. We need better communication between drug companies, distributors, doctors, the FDA. What if they were early warning systems? If we knew about potential shortages ahead of time?
So instead of reacting to a crisis, we could get ready beforehand.
Exactly. And when shortages happen, we need a clear plan. How do we decide who gets the medication? How do we make sure it's distributed fairly?
Wow, we've covered a lot today. The science behind these weight loss drugs, the legal fights over compounding, how it all impacts patient care, the FDA, and then these bigger issues of drug prices and access. It's a complicated story.
It really is. And what we've seen is this isn't just about weight loss. It's about the right to healthcare, making sure everyone can get the treatment they need, whether they're rich or poor, whether they have insurance or not.
What happens if all this continues? Drug prices keep going up. Access keeps getting worse. What does that mean for healthcare in this country? It's scary to think about.
It's a question we all need to ask. Will only the wealthy be able to afford the best treatments? Or can we create a system that's fair, that puts patients first, that makes sure everyone can get the care they need?
That's a powerful thought to leave us with. This has been an eye-opening conversation. It's clear we need to keep asking these tough questions and demanding better answers. It's time to rethink healthcare in this country.
Absolutely. We need to put people before profit and create a system where patients are at the center. That's the future of healthcare.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into weight loss drugs and all the bigger issues they bring up. We hope this has helped you understand this complex situation better, and that you'll keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a better healthcare system forever.